Hello everyone, the Crime Life channel is with you. This case became the most mass murder of children by a mother in the entire history of France. In addition to this sad fact, the story of Dominique Cotret is also notable for the fact that there are no positive characters in it at all. The child killer herself, her family members, lawyers, the prosecutor, judges, and jurors, it seems that they all reside in some kind of parallel reality. The village of Villers-au-Tertre in northern France is the place of action. It all started with the fact that on July 24, 2010, on Fresson Street in a small French village, a married couple was inspecting their plot behind the house in search of a place for a swimming pool. When the decision was made, the workers began to dig the ground, but the process did not last very long. He had to be interrupted because two tiny skeletons appeared to people's eyes. By the size of the bones, eyewitnesses realized that they belonged to infants or even newborns. The couple immediately called the police. They told the arriving employees that they had purchased this house 3 years before the events. The previous owner was a local farmer who owned most of the arable land around the village. After his death in 2007, the farmer's daughter, Dominique Cotret, sold her father's property. The police, having contacted the former owner, intended to ask her about the terrible find. Upon hearing about this, Madame Cotret was not surprised, but explained that these were her children, and if the guards came to her house, they would find 6 more remains there. The house where the first children's bones were found in the yard, the story of a child killer. Dominique left her father's house in 1985 when she married Pierre-Marie Cotret. 2 years later, their eldest daughter, Emmeline, was born. The birth was very difficult, and the hospital staff criticized Dominique for being overweight, which was the reason. From that moment, according to the woman, she developed iatrophobia, or more simply, fear of doctors. Soon, Dominique became pregnant again, but did not immediately inform her husband about it. He will find out about the upcoming replenishment in the family only when the deadline exceeds 7 months. He will hardly be able to get his wife to go to the hospital. And although her second daughter, Virginie, was born without any problems, the woman perfectly remembered the previous negative experiences and behavior of doctors, which she called aggressive and unpleasant. 4 months after giving birth, Cotret was pregnant again, but this time she decided not to tell anyone anything. In due course, she gave birth to her third child in the toilet in her own house, strangled the newborn, and buried his body on her father's property. The next child was born in a hospital toilet, a few days after Dominique was admitted to a medical facility with an epilepsy attack. He will suffer the same fate. One by one, she will give birth to 6 more children, but now their last resting place will be the garage on the territory of the house in which she lived with her husband. Cotret claimed that she began being raped by her own father when she was only 8 years old. This continued into her teens and even after she got married. She never admitted it and did not think to report it to the police because, according to her, she loved her father more than her husband. To hide the consequences of an incestuous relationship, the woman began to kill newborns. But what about contraception? Any normal person will come to mind, and that's it. She could not use the thorough methods offered by medicine because of real or fictional iatrophobia, and condoms and pills were apparently absent in the French village of the 20th century. "This was my contraception," Dominique Cotret will say in court. The husband and 2 daughters of the infanticide, her colleagues, neighbors in general, all assured the investigation that they did not even suspect that in addition to the 2 children who survived, Dominique was pregnant 8 more times. The reason for this, they called her obesity, because of which her stomach was already huge. Dominique's husband, Pierre-Marie, and her daughter Virginie in court. They attributed the unpleasant smell coming from the garage to a possible sewer leak, their dogs, or the feet of the head of the family after a long day's work. I'm not kidding. These are the testimony of relatives. No one began to find out the exact reason because the daughters got married and separated, and it seemed like it was fine for her husband. At first, the investigation suspected Pierre-Marie of involvement in hiding the bodies of the murdered children, but he categorically denied it, and Dominique later admitted that her father, not her husband, helped her in this. Even at the stage of the preliminary investigation, the police, having heard the wonderful story of Dominique Cotret, requested an urgent psychological and psychiatric examination in her regard. As a result, the woman was found to be completely sane, although experts noted a high level of stress and remorse for what she had done. They considered the story of the father's harassment to be reliable. 8 candles at the Cotrus house, which were brought by a local priest in memory of the dead children. The forensic medical examination showed that there were no traces of any injuries and fractures on the remains, so the testimony of the suspect about the strangulation of children could be credible. But the DNA analysis refuted Cotret's concerns about incest. The father of all 8 of the murdered newborns turned out to be her husband, Pierre-Marie. The trial of Dominique Cotret began in July 2015, and it took several sessions to hear all the case materials and numerous witnesses. Initially, the prosecutor's office demanded 18 years in prison for the accused. Later, the term was reduced to 15 years. Cotret's defense was based on her difficult childhood, violence from her father, and a traumatic first birth. We must pay tribute to Dominique's lawyers, who worked brilliantly and presented the child killer as a victim of circumstances. The schoolteacher, who taught both Dominique and her daughters, recalled the former student as a very nice girl who may have been a bit withdrawn. Her former classmate, André Michel, told the court that Dominique started gaining weight as a teenager. She was shy, probably because of her body, which embarrassed her. Emmeline and Virginie Cotret called Dominique an exemplary mother who was always supportive. Both daughters declared that they would stand by their mother no matter what and asked the court to show her leniency. The defendant's husband supported this request. Pierre-Marie Cotret admitted that although he was shocked by what happened, he was not going to divorce his wife and wanted the whole family to continue to be together. Dominique Cotret in court. After reading out all the vicissitudes of the defendant's life, the jury did not take long to recognize them as mitigating circumstances. As a result, a French court sentenced Dominique Cotret to 9 years in prison. The convict was delighted with this decision. It was the first time her actions were heard and understood. After a possible sentence of 18 years, half the sentence is a relief for her. Cotret's lawyer commented on her sentence to journalists. Paroli in January 2018. The press exploded with the news that the 8-time child killer was preparing to apply for parole. Considering that she had proven herself to be an exemplary prisoner in prison from the first day and had never received any penalties, the chances of success of the petition were very high, and so it turned out. The time for the hearing to consider the petition came to June 2018, and the parole board found no grounds for refusal. Dominique Cotret was released from prison in early July after serving only 3 years.